Hi, I'm Ken Shorley. I'm a percussionist from Canada. This is an Ableton Live tutorial. Last year, I did a video where I walked through my setup for live looping incorporated with Ableton. And since I put that video up, some people have asked, is it possible to set up Ableton so that it functions more like a hardware looper, something like a loop station? The answer is yes. And in today's video, I'm going to walk you through and show you how you can use a MIDI foot controller like this and turn Ableton Live into a multi-channel loop station. Okay, the first step is to open a fresh Ableton Live file and to make that a template for your live looping. So this is the standard. When you first open it, you get 2 MIDI tracks and 2 audio tracks. I'm going to delete the 2 MIDI tracks and assign audio 1. I'll call it mic because I'm going to have a mic attached to that. Audio 2, I'm going to have an electric bass assigned to that. So this is receiving signal from channel 1. This is receiving signal from channel 2. Okay. Now on channel 1, I want to import a looper. This is in the audio effects on Ableton. And there's a couple things. I want to make sure that my quantization, global quantization up here is set to 1 bar. And then the quantization within the looper is set to global. Believe me, that will save you some trouble. So make sure that that's there on channel 1 and do the same thing. Import the looper onto channel 2. Global quantization. Okay. Now, once that's there, actually, the other thing I like to do is to just put a limiter on the master output, because if you do a lot of live looping, you realize that when you start stacking layer upon layer, it can get pretty crazy. So having that limiter on the master is just a good safety, so it doesn't peak. So once you have that, go back to your looper, and this is where we start MIDI mapping. Now this particular controller I'm using is called the Looptimus, and it has 20 banks. Yeah, it has 20 different banks of 7 buttons which are assignable. So I'm going to do this demo with 2 tracks, which is for, number 1 and number 2 here. But theoretically, if you can handle it, you could load 20 different loopers. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could do it, and you could handle that with this Looptimus controller. So the main thing that needs to happen to make this work is to MIDI map the buttons for the controls that you want on your looper. So this is how I do it. So you go under the MIDI mapping menu here. You're on mic, which is channel 1. And then this little button here, that's your record. I'm going to map that to button A. And although this is laid out record, overdub, play, when I was working through it, I realized it was more intuitive to hit this one to record than this middle one, button B, to play, and then overdub over here. So that's how I'm going to set it up. So button A is for record, button B is for play, and then button C is for overdub. Now button D is very important. You're going to want to undo some things because, it's just part of live looping. You get into a thing, it's working great, and then the one you're doing now is not quite working. So button D is the undo. If you want to totally stop whatever's going on that looper, you can map a stop, and this little square here is your stop button. So I map that to button E. I like to map the metronome on or off because I really like a metronome at the beginning when I'm starting the loop, and after a while it gets annoying and I want to just turn it off. And once you've done that for channel 1 looper, you hit the next, which brings you to a new bank. And then this will send out separate signals, and then you can map the same functions to your looper on channel 2. All right, let's do some looping. I've swapped out the microphone. I was using a studio condenser before. For live looping, I think it's better to use something like this. This is Shure Beta 57A, which is a dynamic mic. It, in a live situation, will be much better. It will reject feedback. It's not that it will totally eliminate feedback, but it's less prone to feedback. Oh, there's one change that I just realized when I was setting this up. The metronome on off, I've mapped it, rather than what I said was button F, I've mapped it to this stop button, because that's common when you change banks, like when you go from bank 1 to bank 2, it sends the same signal on both banks. If you try to map metronome on and off to button F on bank 1, and then also to button F on bank 2, it just messes things up. So sorry, that was a mistake in the layout. So just to recap, button A is the record, B is play, C is overdub, D up in the corner is undo, E is a stop, and the stop button over here is metronome on and off. All right. So the only things you have to set up beforehand, you have to record arm both tracks and start the transport control running, the overall transport control. If you do that, then all of your loops will quantize to the same beat. If you don't do that, it could get messy. So once you record arm both tracks and start the transport rolling, you don't have to touch the laptop. It's all hands-free. Get our metronome. spend all day here, so I think that's what I'm going to do. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do, and thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.